Everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video today about fascism and about the right and the left and how things can veer a little too far sometimes in certain respects, and how people are complete hypocrites about it, and that's what I don't like. So this newest case in point is with the podcast slash show, YouTube show, Rumble show, the Lotus Eaters. And recently they did a video about Franco, the infamous dictator from the Spanish Civil War, and Spain was aligned with fascists, and self-proclaimed fascists, for anybody that wants to redefine fascism for me or whatever, or Nazis or whatever. So my problem is this. So they go on and say, they use this excuse, oh, well, Franco wasn't that bad. People's living conditions weren't that bad under Franco, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of the right wing likes to do this about certain types of people like that. Pinochet is another guy. It's like, oh, the economy. Oh my God. Free helicopter rides for commies. So what they're doing essentially is the same thing as the far left does about left-wing dictators. They rationalize and make excuses and soften up atrocities and crimes and make backwards rationalizations as well. And I think this is very putrid and just very ugly and terrible that they do this, because it's very disingenuous and stupid. And it basically, you're doing what your enemy is doing as well. I countless times over the years, being very ingratiated into the far left over my lifetime, I've read defenses of Cuba and Fidel Castro and Che Guevara as worshipped, and all these things. And I know for a fact those guys were not good. They were pretty violent, extremist people. So here we have the other side, quote unquote, trying to make excuses for fascists. And it's like, are you going to be consistent? Because you're sure as hell probably attacking people for idolizing Cuba, or Fidel Castro, or Che, or what's his name, Allende, in Chile and stuff like that. Now I'm going to make a note that I'm just going to say, on the American continent, the leftist dictators, quote unquote, were not as well. First of all, it's harder to starve in these countries that are just like tropical regions where you can just pick up fruit off the tree or something. So it's hard to starve people there, So maybe that's part of it, I don't know. But I think that the leftists in the Americas, South Central America, had a different take on Marxism and and communism than people in Eastern Europe or Asia. In my opinion, they were more legitimate in certain ways. Now, that does not excuse their crimes. That does not excuse their suppression of people's rights at all. But I'm just making a note of that. See, I'm doing the same thing as the left does. See, it works both ways. Well, they're not as bad. Well, Franco's not as bad as Adolf Hitler. Oh, the stupid segment. And they're just shooting themselves in the foot. They have a reasonable way. Actually, I do believe that they were better. The leftist dictators in the Americas were, I don't know about, what's his name from Venezuela, but Chavez, but I know that the other ones were far more legitimate than some of the, from Romania, what's his name, Ceausescu? I don't know how to pronounce it. That guy was just a maniac. There's a lot, some of these guys were just completely nuts, and there were the non-aligned people that were leftists, but they were not aligned with either the United States or Russia. Those were probably the only true leftists that you can actually reason with in that situation, because they were legitimately in it less for power than probably, I don't know. I'm just these are all hypotheticals. But anyways, this whole thing about, you know, Franco being this great guy and he needs like a reappraisal and all this stuff. And I'm just like, dude, if someone did that about Stalin, and I'm not comparing him to Stalin. Stalin was far worse than Franco ever dreamed of being. Okay, let's just be honest. But if anybody dreamed of doing it about even like a marginal leftist, like the West German prime, you know, or no, East German prime minister, you know, from 1960 or something, like, well, he wasn't so bad. People had jobs under him. They were doing the same thing as leftists do all day about Franco in this segment. It was just so disgusting and so hypocritical. I mean, you either come at it from an anarchist point of view like I do. I'm like, they're all structures are corrupt and all politics are corrupt, or you just go, you have to go to one of these sides, it seems like. And I think it's really dumb and disingenuous to do this. And I'm going to say that they're supporting fascism, essentially. They're completely being like their critics say they are in this instance. Now, you know, they just had a recent thing on YouTube about Roger Waters and like Lotus Eaters did. You know, I totally agree with them about, you know, he's not a fascist or anything like that ridiculous stuff. But yeah, this Franco thing. So there are, point being is that there are Lotus Eater segments I still watch and like, but this segment is definitely just apologizing for fascism. Let's just be honest here. I mean, if the Young Turks all of a sudden said, well, Fidel Castro wasn't that murderous and people's literacy and living conditions went up under him compared to Bautista, I would call it out too. But actually they already do that, you know, a lot of these people already do that. So, but when I don't think that the right wing should do it either, is my point. Do not defend dictators. It's not funny that Pinochet killed people's families, or, you know, it's not funny, oh, helicopter ride, this whole meme, you know, on the right about helicopter rides because they dropped them from helicopters and all this crap. And I think it's disgusting. It's just terrible. I'll just start joking about gulags, I guess again. You know, anytime a person brings up helicopter rides, I'll talk about sending you to the gulag, you know. Re-education camp. You know, authoritarianism and totalitarianism and these ideologies are bad no matter what side or wing it's from, whether it's right wing or left wing or whatever, or chicken wing, I don't know, buffalo chicken wing, I don't know. It's all stupid. It's all bad. You know, so Franco is bad, Pinochet's bad, Hitler's bad, Stalin's bad, Mao's bad, Lenin was bad, believe it or not. A lot of people still apologize for him a lot. Now, the one thing about Lenin is that some of his economic predictions were slightly, I would just say somewhat truthful. I'm not a fan. I've been talking about before he became, I think most of it before he became, you know, got in power. Some of these writings are from, and who knows if it's even from him or whatever, you know, you can say it's blah, blah, blah. But some of those writings are relevant, you know, like imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. Now, very little, if no, fascist writing. Well, maybe some of Mussolini's treatises on certain things, there might be some relevance to that. I'm just going to say, like, maybe they are. I haven't read enough of Mussolini. I would say Hitler, probably not. You know, I'm just saying, like, the ideas part of it is like, I think that's probably why people actually, part of the reason why, I'm going to probably do a separate video on this, probably why, like, leftism is more forgiven than, like, the far right, because there's this intellectual strain and tradition that has been there for a long time, that fascism, or whatever you want to call it, far right, racism or whatever, I mean, it hasn't been. I think eugenics on some level has an intellectual tradition, but that's a different type of thing too altogether, even though they influence the right. So I don't know. It's just stupid. I think it's like, that's the sad fact of the matter. I'm going to go more into this in the future, where you have the far left that'll defend, you know, or downplay you know, far left politicians or far left dictators, and you have, you know, the right that'll defend far right people. And I mean, I'm talking about even people more in the center will do that. Take case in point, Gary Hart, you know, is like a 1988 presidential Democrat, total, like, I wouldn't call him a neoliberal. He's kind of a little too early for that, but at the same time, he's kind of a corporate liberal kind of guy. He wrote this fiction book about Che Guevara, and it's like playing up on the Che worship and stuff without even knowing the facts about what happened with Che, what he did and stuff. It was like this fictional novel about Che Guevara, and he's like celebrating him and democracy and kind of a, I don't remember what the book exactly said. I think it was like an alternate history or something. Like Che was seen as a good guy. Ironically, from what I've read, I believe Castro was actually more moderate than Che. Believe it or not. So Che was more Stalinistic than more pragmatic Castro. Isn't that a weird twist? But it's very well documented that Che was a maniac. So I do have some books on Che that I'm probably going to get around to reading too. But, you know, the whole point is that these people will defend their side so violently in a certain way. Like, they're so passionately that they will start contradicting themselves at all times. And I say, let's just take a step back and say they're all crooks, you know? And maybe that's a more nihilistic or fatalistic view of history, but it's the truth. I mean, you look at these people, and it's just like, they're awful. Franco is bad. Che is bad, you know? Why can't we be equal, have an equal opportunity to look at authoritarianism and downplay it regardless of what the wing that we're in? But that explains it all. It's this partisan tribal hackery that people are in, you know? So that's kind of what is going on here with this stupid Lotus Eaters presentation on Franco. And I'm not saying that there's no facts in this little video or anything. I'm just saying you're committing this same ideological apologetics that the left is about communists all the time. I mean, you read even Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. I think it's page, I think I remember the page 67 or one of those. Maybe that's not the page. But he's basically defending parts of the Chinese regime from back then, from Mao's time and beyond. Sort of just one factoid about the Chinese regime or something, where it's education or something like that. And obviously, you know, back in the day, like, communism was so attacked, and these communist regimes were so attacked by the media and everybody, that's like, well, you're doing something defiant by saying one positive thing about them, obviously, and it was kind of a rebellious thing from the left to do that. Now, even Noam Chomsky, regardless of his, you know, very famous speeches against Vladimir Lenin that are on YouTube you can watch, in Deterring Democracy, he talks about something about the literacy rate or the healthcare in China or something, like how people survived beyond, you know, better under communism or something. It's like everybody has their intellectual defense mechanisms against, you know, the other side, or, you know, to deflect their own biases, you know. So that's my whole point with this video. It's like people are gonna come up with their own defense of their side and their rationalizations, you know, including me. I've done that too. You know, I'm probably seen as a denier of a certain thing that happened the last 3 years because of my defense of certain things that were going on, or attacks on certain things that are going on. But I'm ready to say that it was a biased point of view, you know. To me, it went a little beyond that, because it's about basic human rights and basic human dignity and ability to free associate with people, which is in our Constitution. Maybe that's why people were mad, because it's like, oh, in an emergency, we got to suspend the Constitution. I say, fuck that. But I think it's consistent to say certain things like that. That's just my opinion. But I'm an ideological partisan bubble myself too, at least about that subject, of course. So, or I was. So I don't think this idea that, I just think that this idea is, everybody's a hypocrite in some way, but when you're defending something so reprehensibly agreed upon just to be edgy, you're just as bad as Howard Zinn defending Mao and people's history of the United States, or Chomsky kind of half defending it, and not exactly, but or saying that the East Timor massacre was just as bad as Pol Pot. That's not what he said, but he's trying to equalize, or what's the word I'm trying to think of? Anyways, that's about all.